All right. Welcome back to the Built to Grow podcast. I'm your host, Timothy James Lyons Jr. in studio, Scottsdale AZ HQ, joined as always by Randall Angston. What's up, buddy?
This is going to be a good one.
This is going to be a good one.
Well, we're fumbling through. I think we're going to get into numbers.
This is take two. I said I made a bloof on the last one. I said the Grow Summit's going to be in Nevada, but it's not. It's in Tennessee, Franklin, Tennessee, guys. When you're listening to this episode, you've got 9 days left on our early bird tickets. That's the cheapest you're going to get these tickets.
That's the day of the release. That's if you're listening to this today, Tuesday, the 22nd.
Yeah,
so 9 days when this came out.
Correct. And so if you're interested in coming out to the Grow Summit, it's fitprogrowsummit.com. Got some great speakers, great lineup. We've got a cool venue. It's a brand new place. It's the Hilton Cool Springs. Excited about this. We got a cool format for everybody. We got the speakers, of course. We got some breakouts. We're going to be grouping people up and stuff. But then we have this round table on the first night, right? So it kicks off with a welcome mixer on Thursday night, but then that Friday night, we're going to put all the speakers at round tables, and we're going to open up for discussion. This is your chance to, ask the expert or just open up conversation, talk about your business, right face to face. We're going to have some beers, some cocktails, some food. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I'm excited for the round tables. I know this is something that we've seen at other conferences, and we really like the idea. So it was something that we definitely wanted to make part of this event, and right. The speakers that are there, like, this is your chance to get one-on-one time with them, to ask the questions that you probably don't have the opportunity to when they're speaking from stage and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that as one of the highlights. But overall, I mean, this is going to be an event like no other. One thing that we do is we always make sure that everybody's going to have a good time along with the quality of the content and the value that they're going to walk away with. So if you guys haven't picked up your tickets, like Tim said, fitprogrowsummit.com. You've got a little bit of time left for those early birds.
The event's on May 19th through 21st, Franklin, Tennessee.
There you go, Franklin, Tennessee.
Yep. All right, so this episode, guys, we got some metrics, some KPIs, some numbers, some things that you should be measuring. And a lot of times what you're looking at is the wrong number.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an ego number, if it's a fluff number, or if you're working with a marketing agency, these are the numbers that really don't matter. And they're trying to make sure that you see them.
Yeah, you're maybe led to believe or focus on. Yeah,
and being in this game for so long, you kind of boil down all of the things that you could be looking at to the most important things. Right. And so this episode, we're just going to run through 5, maybe 6 KPIs that you should be looking at, and let's just jump right into it, right? So, all right, so let's talk about marketing for a second, right? You hire a marketing agency, and what's the very first thing front and center that they're making sure that you see on a daily basis? What is that?
Cost per lead.
Cost per lead. And why is that?
Really, that's all they're concerned with. At the end of the day, their job is to get you, ideally, right, as many leads as possible for as affordable as possible.
Right.
So the cost for each of those leads is what they're focused on.
Yes. And while I would say that is an important metrics, because you don't want to be blowing the budget out of the water on getting 2 leads for like $500 a lead, that doesn't make sense. It really isn't the driver when it comes to moving the needle.
It's not the full picture. If
Yeah,
really is what it is. It's kind of like too narrow of a picture, in my opinion.
So really what we're concerned about is cost per acquisition, so CPA. So the marketing agencies are talking about CPL, cost per lead, and we're looking at CPA, cost per acquisition. Now, what's the big difference? Well, one, a lead is, hey, they've given you their contact information, maybe it's first name and last name, phone number, email. That goes into, that's handed off to you as the gym. Mm-hmm. And now it's your job to convert them. And depending on what the offer is, those leads may be really cheap, but they also may be very unqualified.
Absolutely.
And so if you're running offers, hooks for free this, free that, of course the lead volume is going to go up, the cost per lead is going to come down. But do those people ever actually show up and convert into members? And that, as the gym, is the only thing that matters. Correct. Is the conversion.
Yep.
So you can have a whole bunch of cheap leads that don't mean anything, but the CPA, which is when they actually sign up to become a member, that's the metric we're looking at. And so you got to look at what your revenue per member is, what your average EFT is, what you're getting back at the point of sale. Mm-hmm. And you make a decision on whether or not that CPA is in range or out of range. And yes, there's other factors that go into the CPA, like how well do you close?
Correct.
Do they show up, right?
Yeah.
All these things have to happen downhill of that CPL.
And that's kind of where the agency and the business, I don't want to say are at outs, but that's kind of where there is like the friction, right? Is the pass off, is the, oh, hey, the agency's like, we provided these leads, and then the gym gets them and they never see them, show up, or they can't get them on the phone to return a call or whatever, or, there is no opportunity to convert those clients. Well, obviously that's where the cost per lead, or the agency, then kind of feels the burden, right? Yeah, exactly. Well, they don't know what to do, right? But then at the end of the spectrum, the agency could provide quality leads. In the gym, we went through this as an agency ourselves. Not that it was every case, but there were situations where we were driving tons and tons of paid leads, paid traffic through gyms, and the systems that the gym had to convert weren't there, right? And so there are times where the agency does get the win in, hey, we're doing our job. We're providing you with those good quality leads. The systems of the business need to pick up that brunt. And so both ends are equally as important,
right?
But understanding the full picture as a gym, being able to take responsibility if you're getting good quality leads and being able to convert them, that's on you. Mm-hmm. And if you're not getting leads that you can actually communicate with and have an opportunity to convert,
that's on the agency.
That's where you got to talk to the agency. So
yeah, and I really want to fall back on the offer, right? So the offer that's presented to the marketplace is going to determine a lot of this, and so that's why when you hire agencies, they usually have their playbook of tried and true, low CPL based hooks. Mm-hmm. And those hooks are typically giving them the house away. Like, hey, come in for a free XYZ, free, and that's why the 6-week challenge verbiage of free, which, bait and switch kind of thing, that's up to you whether or not you want to use it. That's why it drives such low lead cost per lead.
There was also a big, again, wedge driven between the person driving the leads mm-hmm. and the business that has to service or have the rest of that conversation, right? The gym or the agency only cared about the low cost lead. So saying free was no problem.
Right.
But then ethically, the gym owner had to, break it to the client that, oh, you got to put something down. Well, no.
Now
of course you got a cheap. Yeah, exactly. It created that friction, but of course you got that cheap lead, right? If you said it was a $500 6-week challenge, you'd have a fraction of those leads coming through the door.
And that's the point I want to make. And so what you guys have to understand as gym owners, it is the verbiage and the hook in the offer that determines the cost per lead, but it also determines the quality of lead. So we've got, if you're interested, we've got hooks that work, that drive great leads, that kind of weed out the tire kickers, and we've got a whole training on this.
Yep.
If you're interested, but I want you to understand, as a gym owner, CPA is really the number that matters.
And this is why it's important to have your marketing match your services, right? Like we talked about recently. Like, if you want to attract long-term sustainable clients, mm-hmm. market to them.
Sure.
Sell to the people that are looking for those things. It's really easy to generate cheap leads.
Okay.
It's really difficult to convert them.
There you go. Okay, so that was the first metric, CPA. Okay, that's the first thing you need to understand. Number 2, member count or sales per month versus what we call the delta. So there's a lot of things that go into this, right? So gyms are always really pushing for more members, more members. But is it the member count that matters, or is it the revenue that you're generating in a particular month that matters? I'd argue it's revenue. Yeah. It's not the member count. So, well, what do you mean, Tim? Well, a lot goes into what, the delta is and what we call our delta. And I will just give it to you real quick. It's the revenue per month per member signed up minus the cancellations, plus or minus the upgrades or downgrades, plus or minus the freezes or unfreezes. Okay. What do you mean? Well, that's the health of your EFT. So every month you're either growing or losing your EFT base. And EFT, for those that don't know, it's electric funds transfer. It's really your MRR. It's your monthly recurring revenue. So it's your monthly recurring revenue that is the lifeblood of any business. It's cash flow. That's the money that you're guaranteed that's coming in next month. If you're a month-to-month place, you're at risk. If you're a paid-in-full place, you're definitely at risk, because if you're doing paid-in-fulls all the time and you're collecting all that money 4 months ago, well, you got to service those people for the next 8 more months with no new revenue coming in. So when we work with gyms, we're really focused on growing the monthly reoccurring revenue. It doesn't matter how many members.
Correct.
So you could have 2 members paying $500,000 a piece, you're making $1 million more.
Yeah.
But of course you're at risk, right? If one of those leaves, you lose half your revenue. But the point is it's revenue per member in a particular month, not necessarily the member count.
And I think that's important too, to remember too, because as we're trying to grow the gym, with a number of members, right? Like the acquisition of new clients is a focus, but the revenue generated per member along with that is also a focus. So focusing on the delta kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You're acquiring more people, but at the same time, you're also considering what they're joining for, right? You're equally as conscious of the services that you provide, not just checking boxes on people. So gyms that are multi-service or offer general gym access as well as training, right? The delta matters massively when the difference between a $35 member and a member who's paying $280, $300, $450 a month.
Right.
That's a real metric that matters.
Well, like for example, in our first location, we had a basic membership, and it was like $29 or $39 a month. I could sneeze and there'd be 200 members in there. But
I was one of them.
Yeah, I could sneeze. Like, hey, we had 200 members paying $40 a month. They say only $8,000, right? It's only $8,000.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like 200 doesn't matter. It's the $8,000 that matters, right? It's that EFT. It's that monthly reoccurring revenue, that delta. That's the number that we look at here at Pulse. Many of our coaching clients are using this formula, delta. Delta. That is the number we look at. And really, delta, all it means is the growth or loss of reoccurring revenue in a given month.
There you go.
And we always have our goal of, depending on the time of the year, it's either $2,000 or $5,000 or $7,000 in growth. And if you're growing every month, hey, you're in a good place.
Great place.
And I'll put it to you this way. If your delta was just $1,000 a month for one whole year, that means the next January, you're making $12,000 a month. And let's just say you didn't sign up anybody, you didn't lose anybody. That entire next year, you're making $144,000 more the next year. That's how important the delta is.
Yep.
It can move the needle dramatically when you're really focused on it. So
I think that right there is a big, that might be the most kind of easy to understand, prevalent number of all that we discuss when it comes to the things you should focus on. We work with a lot of gym owners and they're busy, but this is where busy meets result, or busy meets, the actual, the payoff, because it's one thing to go attract 200 new clients at $8,000, but if you could do it with a handful of clients,
40 clients at 200.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? That's working harder or smarter, not harder, in my opinion.
Well, you obviously have to have the membership levels that would bring that, that service level that brings that revenue. But look, guys, it doesn't matter how many members you have. It matters how much money you're making each month, period. That's the point of this second one. Number 3, well, this is the easy one, gross revenue versus net profit. Gross revenue is the number that everybody flashes on the screen and says, hey, we made $1 million this year. Did you make it, or was it gross or was it net? Obviously it's gross, right? Yep. That's the bigger of the numbers. For those of you who haven't looked at a P&L in a while, gross revenue is the revenue at the top. Net revenue or net profit is the number at the bottom after all the expenses are taken out. Yeah, well, hopefully there is a net profit.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about this industry, and I've looked into this quite a bit, I'm like, what is a healthy net profit percentage in the fitness industry? Well, all numbers point between 8 and 12%. That's not a whole lot, okay?
No.
So let's say you did $1 million and 8% would be $80,000 and 12% would be $120,000 left after the million. Okay, so put that out there for a second. Net profit is what you made in profit. Now, the next one we're talking about is going to throw this on its head. But look, guys, you can make a bunch of money and you can spend a bunch of money getting that money, and you're left with zero. So is it better to have a $1 million gym that makes $80,000, or is it better to have a $500,000 gym that makes $200,000? Right?
Yeah, and this is a great place to understand if you want to see a certain, lifestyle or certain income, or you want to see a certain, net profit, you can reverse engineer that if you know your numbers well enough too. Right. What do we need to go out there and make in order to, keep this percentage? This amount?
Now, when you're playing the tax game and the tax liability game, you're not. There's a lot of things you do to reduce the net profit, because the net profit, if you're an LLC, taxed as an S corp, that goes into what's called K1 distribution to personal income. So you made your money from the gym as far as payroll, and then the gym, let's just say, made $100,000 in net profit. That runs over to your personal, and now you owe taxes on the $100,000. So if you're going for financing, if you're going to sell your gym, you want to show a high amount of net profit as possible, because I mean, there's a bunch of cash left over after all the expenses are paid, but it kicks you in the butt when you end up having to pay taxes on it. So you have to plan 2, 3, 4 years in advance when you're playing the P&L game with, like, hey, what's my future going to look like? Do I want to buy a building? Do I want to buy another business? We want to go for funding and financing. Well, you're going to have to show a high net profit because, obviously that's what the banks are looking for, or a buyer's looking for, but you're also on the hook for the taxes against that. So decide, it really makes sense, because you have to plan your future. And if you're not planning your future, what are you really doing? You're just living day to day, right? Be aware.
Oh, yeah.
Be aware. So I've seen plenty of gyms that are very profitable that show very little net profit, that by design, using Shauna the Tax Scottish as our tax strategist. And so, look, I don't want to pay Uncle Sam 1 penny more than I have to legally.
Yep.
So if there's all these loopholes and tax strategies and shelters available, I'm going to take advantage of those, unless I'm going into a financing play where then I end up, writing checks to the IRS for $127,000, and that stings. Something to be aware of. Okay. Now, let's throw that last metric. We're into number 4 now. Let's look at the next metric, which is net profit versus owner benefit.
There you go.
Now, this is going to throw the net profit on its head. So again, gross revenue versus net profit was our last one. We want to look at net profit. Now, I'm saying, hey, don't look at net profit. Look at owner benefit. So what's the difference? Well, you just learned what net profit was. Owner benefit is, what is the financial benefit that you as the owner, or the founder or the owner of the operation, benefits personally. There's a lot of ways around, there's a lot of things. So number 1, do you have kids? Are the kids, I think it's 9 or 7 years old or older?
He's 7.
Well, those kids can go on payroll. And I think the number went up to like $15,800 a year. Again, check with your tax consultant. But if I'm paying my 10-year-old daughter $15,800, well, it's not taxed, right, to her. She doesn't owe income tax on that. I think there's some Social Security and stuff that gets taken out of, but there's no income tax on that. So she doesn't have to file at the end of the year. That goes into her bank account, and it can be used for anything other than food, water, shelter. So school supplies, horse riding lessons, soccer cleats, whatever that is. Well, you would be paying that as the parent anyway. So you can then reduce your net profit by $15,800, and that moves over into the owner benefit line. Gas, Costco runs, workout shoes, all into the business. Again, that reduces your net profit, but it moves over to owner benefit. Now, the thing about owner benefit is you have to track all this stuff, because let's just say you're going to go sell your business and you've got a lower than normal net profit. Well, if you can show, look, all these other items that got taken out of the P&L for the owner's benefit are going to go to the new owner.
New owner, yeah.
That goes into the sales price.
Absolutely. You're that's a way wildly attractive business as opposed to the, one that can't show that, right? That's massive. That's what owners want to see. They want to see the ability to step in and not have to buy a job.
Correct. And so if I'm a buyer of a business and I see like $300,000 in owner benefit, but the payroll to the owner was only $20,000 and the net profit's only $80,000, but I can add that $300 back in, that's a totally different situation than an $80,000 net profit business. So something to think about. All right. Next one. This kind of rolls into our other one. Member count versus revenue per member.
Yeah.
So back to the other one where we're talking about delta, We also want to make sure that we understand the average revenue per member. So if your average revenue per member is $300, that's because you're rolling in supplements and nutrition coaching and maybe some other stuff. Well, the idea is to get as much revenue per member as possible. So there's 3 ways to make more money. More members, have your clients buying more things, or what they're paying per month. It could go up. So revenue per member. And so we always look at revenue per member. We always look at revenue per member out, like who canceled, what memberships were they on versus who were signing in, what memberships they're on. And I always want to see the out less than the in.
It rolls up to the delta.
There you go.
We're paying attention today.
rolls up to the delta. Yeah. So, so it doesn't sting as much when you're losing those lower paying members when you're signing up members that are either twice or 3 times as much, right? So like we have some old members paying old rates, and when they leave, it sucks. But when I look at their rate going out the door and what the next person signs up in the door,
way easy to recover that. Yeah,
it's pretty cool to
that's
see.
Where your delta jumps and stuff like that. But the beautiful part is, or not the beautiful part, the interesting part about this one is this is somewhat wildly important when you're focusing on the numbers of your business. You know, when you're having that conversation with yourself, looking at the member, the revenue generated per member, always like those 3 ways to make more money should be the focus. The other end, like member count, really, it's an ego metric. Right. I mean, at the end of the day, like the only time like it ever matters is, you know, I don't know I don't know why it would matter if you're talking about it with other people. Like, you know, oh yeah, my gym's got 500 members, or I don't know.
But
I just don't
that's
see that
like
as
that's like a gross revenue.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't see. Yeah, if you're having a conscious, you know, if you're in your business trying to make a change, those aren't the ones to focus on for those reasons.
It's a vanity metric.
Vanity was the one I was trying to think.
Well, in the funny thing is, the first 5-7 years of business, it was all about member count for me.
300.
Well, but it was always about like how many members do we have?
Oh, I got you. I guess I never realized it from that. I always just naturally equated it to, you know, you're conscious of the math and the direction. But I mean, I remember walking into the office and I was on the board every day.
Yeah, always trying to hit those numbers.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter. Like, would you rather have twice as many members paying half as much? Would you rather have 10 dimes or 4 quarters?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we've all decided, and in past episodes, that the lowest paying members typically are the hardest to manage. And it's just a thing, right? And like if we know that to be true.
It's a law. I mean, it's an average. It's a law of average.
If we know that to be true, wouldn't it make sense to have a much higher price membership, have less members, but you're making more money and less people to deal with? I think so, like personally.
Then there's the one thing that, you know, it doesn't, the dollars and cents are awesome, but you still got to show up and service them every day, right? And if you're doing, like, if all of these things are great and you're making great money, but you're pounding your head against the wall, walking through your 4, you know, walls of your business every day, that might not be worth it either. Right. You know, so there are those things that you have to consider. More money isn't always the best situation. You always have to consider what you're doing to service that.
Well, more members or more money?
Correct. In that situation, it'd be more members, but
right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, the idea of just more is better.
So kind of going back, we should be looking at CPA.
Correct.
We should be looking at your delta, net profit, owner benefit, revenue per member. Okay. Now the last metric, which is kind of a bonus, is square foot of your facility versus revenue per square foot of your facility. So we're kind of going back in time, and our first location was 3,100 square feet, and we did $529,000 in that last year in that old space. And I think we did the math, $170 a square foot. That's a decent revenue per square foot. Now, we make more money here, but less per square foot, which is interesting, right? So at the end of the day, when you have a big footprint, you have a big expense.
Yeah.
And so could you be more efficient? I've seen models today doing $200 a square foot.
Mm-hmm.
So take your total revenue. Again, this would be where gross would come in. Take your gross revenue and divide it by your total square foot and see what your revenue per square foot is. Then start looking around your gym and looking at the square footage of your gym. Is it all being used in the right way? For example, this room that we're in today was part of a yoga room that we had created, Yoga Spin. Well, after a while, we got rid of it. And it was just this empty room. It's like, we're paying for it. We need to leverage the square footage of the gym. And so we obviously built the podcast studio and we rent out the other side to a chiropractor. And so we're making money in that square footage. We're making money in this square footage. And so you just got to be more efficient. You got to look at your total gym. Do you need all that space? Now, typically the answer is no. You can do a lot in a small space. There's models today doing, 400,000 and 1,500 square feet. And of course, that's a semi-private model, high price point, low member count, and that's all good. And so again, all these numbers that we're saying not to look at are typically the ego-driven ones.
Sure, yeah.
How big's my gym? What's my member count? What's my gross revenue? What's my cost per lead? None of that matters. None of it matters, to be honest with you.
Truly, yeah.
It's the other side. It's the CPA, the delta, the net profit, the owner benefit, the revenue per member, and the revenue per square foot. Those are the numbers that matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this episode today is to help you identify the numbers that matter and stop worrying about these vanity metrics over here, because you're no better off with these being much higher when these other sides are lower. So you just got to make sure you know what you're looking at here.
It's funny, like as we're talking about, like the ego versus like the result, like these are actual results, right? This is money in the bank type of thing.
On the right side, yeah.
You know, when we're focused on the actual KPIs that we want to focus on, and it's so important, because like the growth of your business, none of those other things matter. Like everything that we talk about with every one of our coaching clients and all of it, like the clarity that comes from just focusing on the right things changes all of it.
Yep.
If you like, the quality of life is all here. This is almost like the fake it till you make it.
On the other side,
the gross, yeah.
I know, and in some circles, and you see this online today in the social media, exactly. It's all about gross revenue. It's all you see CPL a lot too, especially coming from these marketers. Hey, we got $2 CPLs. Well, again, I look right through that. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a $90 CPL, but my CPA is well within range.
Correct.
Like I can have 1,000 leads at $2 that none of them convert. That was a waste of money. So know what you're looking at. And I think it takes time under tension and time in the gym and hitting, like getting your scars and calluses to understand like that doesn't mean anything to
I was going to say that too. I think that there's something about being in the industry for longer, or as you start to understand kind of like where the importance is, and you get away from like the kind of the shiny ball of like, hey, I got a new business type of thing. That's where these start to settle. Like owners start to realize like, okay, wow, that sounds awesome. It doesn't mean anything. Like this is really what's important.
Right.
This is where I need to keep my focus. And guys, at the end of the day, those are the things that are going to drive the quality of your life.
Right.
Wildly.
Right.
Like these small things aren't going to matter in time. I'll tell you what, like actual net profit will always mean a hell of a lot more than gross revenue.
Yeah, it does. It
just does.
So anyways, here's some KPIs for you guys to look at, some metrics. These are the needle movers in your business. If you want help, if you need help with this, this is something we love to do. We'll dissect your business in our coaching program. That's winninggym.com/call. You can jump on that and jump on a call with Randy. You will speak to Randy on this.
That was pfmarketingsolutions.com/call. winninggym.com/coaching. We'll go to coaching.
Okay. Anyways, we'll put those in the show notes so you don't have to think about writing that down. But I'm guessing that you're going to want to listen to this episode a few times. There's a lot packed into this, what was this, 20 minutes or so?
Well, let's take the conversation deeper. Jump into the Facebook group. Let's have this conversation. We'll create a post. We'll share, so maybe we'll start with like revenue per square foot, and we'll start to see where everybody kind of stacks.
Yep.
And then we can, give some suggestions and start the conversation, guys. A rising tide raises all ships. It's not hard to succeed when everyone's here for the same purpose. So
exactly. Awesome. Well, that's it for this episode. Until next time, keep changing lives. We'll see you on the next show. Bye. All right. And thank you for listening to that episode of the Built to Grow podcast, where we help gym owners win. Now, do you want to connect with me and other gym owners online? All you need to do is join our private Facebook group, Business Talk with Fitness Professionals. Just head on over to Facebook and type in Business Talk with Fitness Professionals. And when you do, we're going to give you our 10 marketing strategies 7-figure gym owners use to win. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until then, keep building something great.